Long before the bright lights of Las Vegas, long before the smooth voice, the tuxedo, the glass of whiskey, and the effortless charm that made millions fall in love with him, there was just a quiet boy named Dino Crocetti. He was born on June 7th, 1917, in the steel town of Steubenville, a gritty industrial city sitting along the Ohio River. Smoke from the steel mills filled the air every morning, drifting over rows of brick houses where immigrant families lived packed closely together. Life there was tough, loud, and hard-working. It was the kind of place where dreams didn't come easy. Dino's parents had come from Italy looking for opportunity. His father, Gaetano Crocetti, worked as a barber. His mother, Angela Crocetti, managed the home and raised the children with firm Italian traditions. Inside their small house, Italian was the only language spoken. Little Dino didn't know a word of English. At home, the smell of homemade pasta and tomato sauce filled the kitchen. His mother hummed old Italian songs while cooking. His father talked loudly with friends who visited the barber shop. The language, the laughter, the traditions, everything in Dino's early life felt like a tiny piece of Italy planted in American soil. But outside the front door was a different world. When Dino first went to school, everything felt unfamiliar. The teachers spoke English, the other children spoke English. The books, the lessons, even the jokes. None of it made sense to him. The first few weeks were brutal. Children can be cruel when someone is different. Dino's classmates laughed at his accent and mocked the way he struggled to understand simple words. Sometimes he would just sit quietly at his desk, hoping the teacher wouldn't call on him. Other times he would fight, and Dino could fight. Steubenville was a rough town where boys learned quickly that respect often came from standing your ground. Dino wasn't the biggest kid, but he was stubborn and fearless. If someone pushed him, he pushed back harder. His teachers often complained that he was more interested in throwing punches than doing homework. School never really felt like a place where he belonged. But there was one place where Dino felt completely comfortable: his father's barber shop. The barber shop was a small room filled with mirrors, leather chairs, and the smell of shaving cream. Men came there not just for haircuts, but to talk about life, sports, politics, and sometimes to sing. Yes, sing. Italian immigrants loved music, and when the mood was right, someone would start humming an old song from home. Little Dino would sit quietly in the corner, watching everything. Listening. Absorbing. He loved the rhythm of voices, the rise and fall of melodies, the way a simple song could make a room feel warm and alive. Sometimes his father would notice him listening and smile. "Dino," he'd say in Italian, "sing that song you like." The boy would hesitate at first, shy in front of the adults, but then he'd sing. Softly, the men in the barber shop would stop talking and turn toward him. For a moment, the clippers would go silent. Because even as a kid, Dino's voice had something special. It wasn't powerful yet, it wasn't polished, but it had warmth. Years later, people would call that sound smooth. They would say it felt like velvet or warm whiskey on a cold night. But back then, it was just a shy boy singing in a barber shop. Outside of music, Dino's childhood was full of odd jobs and rough adventures. His family wasn't rich. Like most immigrant families in Steubenville, they worked hard just to survive. As a teenager, Dino tried many different jobs. He worked at a steel mill for a short time, but the work was brutal and dangerous. The heat from the furnaces felt like standing inside a volcano. Sparks flew through the air while workers hammered glowing metal late into the night. Dino lasted only a short time there. "This isn't for me," he told a friend. Instead, he tried other ways to make money. He delivered bootleg liquor during the Prohibition era, quietly transporting illegal alcohol for local gamblers and businessmen. He worked as a blackjack dealer in small gambling houses around town. He even boxed under the name Kid Croquette. Boxing paid a little money, but it came with bruises and broken noses. After one particularly rough fight, Dino looked at himself in the mirror and laughed. "There's got to be an easier way to make a living," he joked. What he didn't realize yet was that the easier way had been with him all along. His voice. The real turning point came when Dino started hanging around local nightclubs in Steubenville. These places were small and smoky, filled with workers who wanted to forget their long days at the mills. One night, the singer scheduled to perform didn't show up. The band leader looked around the room and noticed Dino sitting at the bar. "You sing, don't you?" he asked. "A little," Dino replied. "Get up there." Dino stepped onto the tiny stage, nervous but curious. The band began playing a slow Italian ballad, and he sang. Something changed in that moment. The room went quiet, not the distracted quiet of people waiting for the next drink. but the kind where every person stops and listens. When he finished, the applause surprised him. It was the first time he realized something important. People liked listening to him, really liked it. From that night forward, Dino began singing more often in clubs around Steubenville. Slowly he built confidence. Slowly he learned how to charm an audience. Eventually he changed his name. Dino Crocetti became Dean Martin. Years later he would share stages with legends like Frank Sinatra and become part of the famous Rat Pack. But that was still far in the future. For now he was just a barber's son from a steel town, a boy who once couldn't speak English, discovering that the thing that made him different might one day make him unforgettable. As Dino Crocetti grew into his teenage years in Steubenville, life didn't suddenly become easier. School still felt like a place where he never quite belonged. The lessons bored him, and the teachers often complained that he had more interest in street life than textbooks. By the time he reached his mid-teens, Dino made a decision that would change the direction of his life. He dropped out of school. For many families, that would have been a disaster. But in a steel town where most boys ended up working long shifts in factories anyway, it wasn't unheard of. Dino simply started doing whatever work he could find. For a while, he worked in a local steel mill. The heat from the furnaces was intense, and the work was exhausting. Men twice his age came home with burned hands and aching backs. Dino quickly realized he didn't want to spend the rest of his life there. Looking for something different, he began hanging around local gambling spots and bars. During the era of prohibition in the United States, illegal alcohol flowed quietly through towns like Steubenville, and Dino sometimes helped deliver bottles for local gamblers. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than factory work. Around the same time, Dino discovered boxing. Under the name Kid Crockett, he fought in small local matches. He wasn't the most skilled boxer, but he was tough and stubborn. Still, the fights left him bruised and bloodied more often than victorious. After one rough match, he stared at his swollen face in the mirror and laughed. Deep down, he knew this wasn't his future. Somewhere inside him was a different talent waiting to be discovered. The same voice that once echoed softly inside his father's barber shop. And soon, that voice would begin opening doors Dino never imagined possible. By the time Dino Crocetti reached his early 20s in Steubenville, life had already taken him through more paths than most young men his age. He had worked rough jobs, stepped into boxing rings, and spent long nights around smoky bars where gamblers and musicians mixed freely. But one thing kept pulling him back: music. One evening, while sitting in a small nightclub, the bandleader noticed Dino humming along to a song. The singer scheduled that night hadn't shown up, and the room was getting restless. "You know the words?" the bandleader asked. Dino shrugged. "I think so." Moments later, he stood nervously on the tiny stage. When the music began, he closed his eyes and started to sing. His voice was smooth, relaxed, and warm. The crowd slowly quieted. For the first time, Dino realized something powerful. People didn't just hear him. They felt something when he sang. And that realization would eventually transform Dino Crocetti into Dean Martin.